Look at my fiance. He's driving me. You can see my books right there. And he loves me, so he bought me food so we can eat on our way there. It's gonna take forever. You see the traffic? Look at that. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Ah! We're finally here, but they had like another event going on, so we're awkwardly waiting.
What grade you teach?
Maybe you have the rest of my books.
There we go. We don't want to see you. We want to see the books.
We'll just have to do it again.
Oh, are you? Yeah.
They gave us stickers.
So
I can't right now.
I love coming to Blue Willow. It's such an amazing community here in Houston, and driving around today and seeing all of the storm wreckage and seeing how the community is really pulled together and how Blue Willow has supported the local schools and bringing more books in has been absolutely amazing. So don't hesitate to donate if you have the means and the ability, and kind of, I think what Blue Willow is doing here is absolutely amazing. They really are now like the book brokers of the community, getting books to people who need them most. So, like I said, it's always a pleasure to come back here. I'm really excited to talk to you guys today about my little demonic book, as I call it. This is my first real foray into middle grade fiction. It was such a fun experience to work on this book, and I guess I should start at the beginning. My whole thing I like to do at events is really just to tell you a little bit about the book, and then I like to toss it over to you guys for questions, and I am really good at tangents, so I can fill an hour of talking. I think it's really fun to see where we go in terms of the conversation. So if you have questions about the Darkest Minds movie, about writing, about being an author, anything like that, feel free to ask. I am an open book tonight. It is the last night of tour. You're gonna get me. Very honest. But yeah, Prosper. Okay, so The Dreadful Tale of Prosper Redding was a book I actually wrote in 2011. It's a book I've been telling people is a really good example of not giving up on a book that you believe in just because the market isn't right for it when you're working on it. Prosper, I wrote it in between The Darkest Minds and Never Fade because I kind of needed a break from Ruby's Head. Like, Ruby's Head is just kind of a sad place to be, and my dad had just recently been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and so my way of processing what I'm going through in life is to write about it and to write stories and to kind of work my way through it that way. So my goal in writing Prosper was kind of just to make myself laugh and to write a book that was filled to the brim with things that I love, first and foremost being Halloween. Do we have any Halloween devotees in the room?
Yes.
Did anyone immediately gravitate towards the amazing Halloween table? I was like, yes, I'm so ready for Halloween. And in fact, I just moved to a new house. And I was told that this new neighborhood is really into Halloween, and I was like, great, I can't wait to decorate. And then my mom sent me a picture yesterday of my neighbors across the street. They have an actual metal fence that they've put out that's very like gothic in style, and it had these amazing glowing pumpkins on it, and they created this like metal arch over their walkway, and they told my mom that it takes them 3 weeks to decorate for Halloween, and I was like, I have found my people. But okay, so I also have to rewind a little bit and tell you guys that I grew up in Arizona. I grew up specifically in Phoenix, Arizona, land of no visible climate seasonal change. So it looks exactly the same in the middle of December as it does in August, except there are probably a few more plants that are dead in August when it feels like you live on the surface of the sun. And so I was really captured, like Hocus Pocus, the Disney Channel original Halloween movies really captured my imagination when I was young, because that was such a foreign landscape to me, because all of these beautiful fall leaves that I was seeing around Halloween every year were all fake. They were all my mom's like decorative arrangements around the house. And my mom was born in late October and grew up in Massachusetts, and so she was like a true Halloween devotee, so I owe that love to her. So she would go all out to kind of compensate for the fact that we had palm trees in our yard instead of these beautiful oak trees. They're just like beautiful leaves drifting down. But so this book is really my ode to those Disney Channel Halloween movies that I love so much and that really captured my imagination growing up. And let's see, what else can I tell you about it? Here's a fun fact that no one is allowed to tweet because you'll understand it. Standards. And Prosper, because every good book needs a dark twist to set it off. Prosper discovers that the reason for all of this good fortune in his family was because his family in the 17th century, when they were founding their small town, made a deal with an evil creature called a fiend, because in a middle grade book you cannot use the word demon or devil, as I discovered. Middle school library is not down with that, understandably. And the family freaked out because in nearby Salem, the witchcraft trials were happening, and they were like, oh, like, someone's gonna say they saw Goody Good with the devil over here in Red Hood. And they decided to try to break the contract, and you cannot break a contract with a fiend, aka a demon. So it's our secret, don't tell them it's and with disastrous results, basically. And this creature, Alistair, who's on the front cover of the book, appears in the human world as a fox, because his true form, as he likes to say, is too terrible to behold. He vows to come back for his revenge, so enter Prosper. He is basically reborn as a spirit inside of Prosper and now is trying to get back out again. And Prosper has to basically escape his own family because he's sure that they will do anything, including maybe even kill him, to keep all of this wealth and power and fame, because that's what his family seems to value more than anything, including seemingly him. So he escapes to Salem, and I loved writing all of the scenes in Salem. I took a really brief research trip there before I even wrote the book, and it ended up really filling the book with these interesting Salem-specific details. Like, my mom was a great person to interview. She grew up in Massachusetts. About, like, when you were a kid, what was the first sign of fall for you? What did the air smell like? Little details like that that are really specific and kind of help just help portray that area in a nice way. But visiting Salem showed me how intense they are about Halloween. Even I underestimated how much Salem, Massachusetts gets into Halloween. They are not ashamed of their history. They are fully for it. And it's a beautiful historic town if you are in the area. It's a wonderful quick day trip from Boston. Cannot recommend it enough. So you have these very like picturesque New England towns, but then you also have the main street, which is very like tourist trappy, and they have these incredible tourist trappy haunted houses that you can go into and like live your best life as a Halloween person. And so seeing these haunted houses and actually experiencing Salem and walking around was what inspired the Salem section of the book, and having Prosper go stay with his cousin and his mysterious Uncle Barnabas, and they live in one of those haunted houses, a working haunted house, which might also be legitimately haunted because it's that kind of book. So that gives you like a little bit of rambling insight into this book. There are so many things in it that I love, and that's what made it such a joy to write. And I think you can tell when an author has had so much fun working on a book, and this is one of those for me. Really was my good distraction in a really hard time, so I hope you guys like it as much as I liked writing it. Are subconsciously picking up on things like pacing and on how to vary sentences and the syntax of them. Really, you expand your vocabulary by reading. But then when you're considering it from a craft side of things, different types of genres will teach you different elements of storytelling in really prominent ways. So the example I always give is, if you read a romance novel, they are incredibly good at building character relationships out, and they kind of show you the many different styles of arcs that you can go with, especially when building a romance, but even friendship too. With mysteries, you get a really good sense of how to plot, because you have to be so clever when you're planting all of your clues and your red herrings, and they're amazing when it comes to teaching you how to insert a twist that readers will not see coming and how to not choreograph that twist, and so on and so forth. But even reading nonfiction is really useful because you will be surprised by how fascinating history it is and how many different ideas you can pull from it, or not even pull from it, but be inspired by and kind of play with a little bit in your own storytelling. I always say that I was a history and English double major in college, but I actually ended up finding my history major a lot more useful when it came to my writing, because when you study history, you learn about how all these different areas of life are interconnected with one another, how the economy and religion and just how societies and cultures exchanged information and exchanged goods. That is invaluable for figuring out how to build, especially fantasy worlds and worlds that don't exist in real life and you can't necessarily research. So that, and let's see what else. My other piece of advice is to keep a notebook by your bed at night. I have found that all of my best ideas come in that like 3 seconds before I fall asleep. And I have also learned that I cannot write the notes in my phone because I'm so tired that autocorrect gets me every time, and then the next morning I wake up and I'm like, oh yeah, what was that amazing idea? And it's complete gibberish because I just was not like looking at the phone. Or I've also started trying to use Siri, so I'm like in the darkness with the dog at the end of the bed. I'm like, Siri, remind me, murder in the graveyard. So I'll get like a weird reminder the next morning that I have no memory of. But if you keep a notebook by your bed, you can actually, it forces you to sit up and write the idea down before it disappears forever. Once they're there, they're gone. They'll never come back. But my other piece of writing advice, one more piece, is that if you keep a notebook by your bed, you can kind of do what I do, which is if you feel like it's such a hurdle to sit down and start with a blank page or start with a new chapter, or if you find that it takes you a really long time to get going when you're working on a chapter or scene, what I like to do when I'm working, actively drafting a book or revising a book, is that I will write out the first couple paragraphs, usually of the scene I'm going to work on the next day. And so then when I sit down in the morning, I can just retype those and kind of adjust them to make sense grammatically. And also, sometimes I'll just write, my friend Susan Tennard calls it like screenplaying, where you just write down the dialogue of that scene and you go in and fill everything in later. But you're not starting from zero, which then means you can build momentum easier, and it kind of helps carry you through the writing that day that you need to get done. So those are three very different pieces of advice.
All right. Thank you.
Hi, adorable bookworm viewers. Welcome to the channel.
That was a lot of fun. I think I embarrassed myself in front of her, but it's fine. My fiance got me a smoothie.